us a little bit about your background.
Well, I originally started teaching overseas in the early 90s, and as a result I've traveled to several different countries teaching ESL and developing curriculum and managing curriculum for private schools and international schools, mostly in Japan, China, and a couple other Asian countries.
For those of us laymen, tell us what ESL is.
English as a second language, and it's for kids whose first language is not English, who then for whatever reason, it might be because it's the school curriculum or what have you, they decide to learn English most successfully if they start younger. But although, a lot of adults as well do it, people who are new, say, to the United States or to an English-speaking country that need to learn the language. But ESL stands for English as a second language.
In this series of books, there's games for the classroom. Again, as a layman, what good are games in the classroom?
People who are traditionally have been in education for years and years ask the same question, and really the answer is that kids in particular learn best when they learn actively, by actively participating rather than by sitting and listening passively. If you can get a child involved in the education process, their own, literally becoming sort of an architect of their own education, the results are always much better than the traditional lecture test format that's so unfortunately used so often.
Adopted the saying, tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn. Is that accurate?
That is so accurate. Kids, especially when you give them activities and you tell them if a kid can touch language, for example, it's so much more effective than just by listening and the old, say, repeat after me format that was used unsuccessfully for years in ESL education. But if you can get a kid to listen and touch and speak and participate and play in a second language, your results are not only better, but they're also much faster than learning in a traditional manner.
Again, as a layman, how do you touch language?
You can touch language a lot of different ways. TPR activities, for example, total physical response, is when you give the child a command and the child needs to follow it by, let's say Simon Says, for example, is an example of TPR. When you say, the teacher says, Simon says touch your ears, the kid must touch his ears. You could do it with games, little pieces of paper to do charades or role-playing. You can do it with balloons, with a question inside the balloon, so the kid has to pop the balloon. But if you get them that tactile response to language, is very, very powerful.
Who are we trying to touch with these books?
ESL teachers is a primary market, but also these games translate well into the mainstream. English teachers, for example, of native-speaking kids would be able to use a lot of these games. Even a lot of quiz games and a lot of other participation activities that we have would be good for math teachers or biology teachers, really across the spectrum of not just kids learning English as a second language, but native kids who are already fluent. If a teacher wants to add a pop and a little bit of excitement and generate a little more interest in the class, these games would work perfectly.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for offering these books. As I said, we're thrilled to publish them. I hope they do lots of good for lots of teachers and even more so for lots of kids.
Thank you, Larry. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much.